2016, Godfrey Malembeka, serving as Executive Director of the Prisons Care and Counseling Association PRISCA, challenged the status quo in relation to voting by persons in incarceration in the case of Godfrey Malembeka versus the Attorney General and the Electoral Commission of Zambia. The Constitutional Court, in Selected Judgment number 34 of 2017, held that persons in lawful custody and those whose freedom of movement is restricted under a written law are entitled to vote in future elections. Following this decision, the Ministry of Home Affairs requested the Zambia Law Development Commission, whose primary mandate is to conduct law reforms, and the Zambia Correctional Service and other institutions to facilitate the operationalization of the prisoners' right to vote. The Zambia Law Development Commission conducts research and makes recommendations on, among others, the social-political values of the Zambian people that should be incorporated into legislation, the anomalies and archaic provisions that should be eliminated from Zambia's legislation, new and more effective methods of administration of the law, the dispensation of justice and new areas of the law that should be developed, which are responsive to the changing needs of the Zambian society. In 2019, the Zambia Law Development Commission undertook a desk study and compiled a position paper on the operationalization of the right to vote for persons in lawful custody. In April 2020, the paper was then shared with the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and the Zambia Correctional Service, and with stakeholders and the general public in a virtual dissemination meeting which was held on 22nd July 2020. In January 2020, the Electoral Commission of Zambia appointed to a technical committee to lead operationalization of the right to vote by persons in lawful custody. The Zambia Law Development was then appointed to this committee and to lead the development of appropriate legislation to facilitate voting by persons in lawful custody.
To this effect, the Electoral Commission of Zambia constituted a technical committee with representation from government ministries, quasi-institutions, civil society and church. The committee comprised of the following: Ministry of Justice, Zambia Law Development Commission, Zambia Correctional Service, Zambia Police Service, Department of National Registration, Passport and Citizenship, the Human Rights Commission, non-governmental gender organizations, coordinating council, that's NGOCC, Christian Churches Monitoring Group, and the Electoral Commission of Zambia.
As part of the process of reviewing the existing legal framework and developing appropriate legislation, the technical committee led by the Zambia Law Development Commission undertook mapping of prisons and correctional centers in order to ascertain modalities that need to be put in place to facilitate registration and voting by persons in incarceration. 29 correctional centers, 18 correctional farms, the reformatory school in Livingstone, and the approved school in Mazabuka were visited during the mapping exercise. During the exercise, the teams conducted key informal interviews with officers in charge of the prisons and correctional centers and focus group discussion with small groups of randomly selected inmates in each facility using questionnaires and interview guides developed for the process. Virtual comparative study was undertaken with Lesotho, South Africa, Namibia, and Kenya to review the legal and administrative frameworks in these countries in order to learn best practice relating to voting by incarcerated persons were also undertaken. Stakeholder consultations were then undertaken to gather views from the stakeholders on the proposed legislation and to share the findings from the mapping exercise and the...
As I've said, Therefore, our stakeholder consultations would be incomplete without seeking your. This is in fulfillment of our statutory mandate as an institution that is empowered with law review and the legitimate expectation from the Electoral Commission of Zambia, as well as the technical committee.
It is not going to finish here. The Commission intends to speak with the Law Association of Zambia, the judges themselves, the churches, the chiefs, service chiefs, because it is important to have the voice of all stakeholders that are involved in ensuring that persons in lawful custody are given the right to vote.
Yeah. This was then followed by the stakeholder validation meeting, which were held in February 2020. And the findings and submissions from the mapping exercise, the comparative study, and the stakeholder consultations were compiled into a report which, together with the findings of the Zambia Law Development Commission position paper, guided the drafting of the proposed amendment bills.
The second part is we proposed an amendment to Section 2, which is the interpretation section of the Electoral Process Act. We are introducing 3 new terms. It reads, Section 2 of the Principal Act is amended by the insertion of the following new definitions in the appropriate places in alphabetical order. The first one is legally disqualified, means having no legal capacity as provided in Section 4 of the Mental Health Act. So
proposed draft bills developed following this process are the proposed draft Electoral Process Amendment Bill 2021, the proposed Electoral Process Campaign in Prisons and Correctional Centers Regulations 2021. This proposed draft bill and proposed regulations provide for the repeal of Section 47 of the Electoral Process Act, which was declared null and void by the Constitutional Court in the Godfrey Malembeka case, registration and voting by persons in lawful custody in prisons and correctional centers. It also provides for the prohibition of physical campaigns in prisons or correctional centers by candidates or political parties. It provides for meeting or allowing candidates or political parties to distribute paper-based campaign materials and electronically recorded messages as platforms for information dissemination to enable persons in lawful custody to vote from an informed position. It provides for access to prisons or correctional centers by monitors, observers, polling agents, and the media. It provides for access to the surrounding community to vote in polling stations established in prisons and correctional centers. It also provides for allowing the intermixing of ballots to prevent the possible victimization that inmates and Zambia Correctional Service officers may face in certain instances. The proposed draft Electoral Commission of Zambia Amendment Bill provides for access to prisons and correctional centers by the Electoral Commission of Zambia for purposes of establishing registration centers, polling stations, and undertaking electoral processes. The proposed draft Prisons Amendment Bill 2021 provides for prohibiting political campaigns and the establishment of the political party branches. In Article 46 of the Constitution of Zambia, Amendment number 2 of 2016 states that a citizen who has attained the age of 18 years is entitled to be registered as a voter and vote in an election by a secret ballot. The case of Godfrey Malembeka v. the Attorney General and the Electoral Commission of Zambia judgment affirms the right for every person, including persons in lawful custody, to register and vote in an election and participate in the decision-making of the country. It is a responsibility of a citizen to register and vote if eligible in national and local government election and the referendum.